But we've learned this the hard way because whenever we said yes to that money, it actually hit us badly in our focus area. I'll give you an example of something that happened with us. And we lost a very, very good person on the team because of this.
As a founder, how do you develop these powerful insights? So reading is one way, talking to people is another. You're very well aware of what's happening in the world. But any advice on how do you develop this founder's instinct?
It's a stunted ecosystem. There's a lot of evolution, maturity that needs to happen, right? Hello, everybody. Great to have you with us for our next podcast. Today, delighted to have Shivang Desai, who's the CEO and co-founder of Bigthinx. And Shivang is also a serial entrepreneur. Shivang, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Pushkar and me would first up like to really understand your journey and how you started.
Firstly, thanks for having me. And the way this started was back in about 2018, 2019, where my co-founder Chandralika and I faced much the same problem. When we were shopping online, we couldn't really determine what size to buy. And this really came to the fore with Ralph Lauren. I really liked the fit of Ralph Lauren, or so I thought. And I bought Ralph Lauren online and it hung like a tent on me. And I was like, what exactly is going on? Then when I dug deeper, I realized that Ralph Lauren for every size has 6 different fits.
Really?
So, yeah, so you've got classic, custom, custom slim, slim, and so on and so forth. So this really brought to the fore a problem that we were both facing, that we kept buying stuff and returning it. So we thought, let's try and solve this. We met with the founder of one of the fashion unicorns in India. He advised that this was a big problem. He gave us some ideas on what we could do about it. And we came up with this brilliant idea for that we would do virtual try-ons. Now, little did we know that that history is littered with the corpses of companies that have tried to do virtual try-ons. There is a very low barrier to entry in that. And that's how we ended up becoming what we are today, a fashion content company, digitizing fashion into 3D and then powering applications with it.
Wow. But Shivang, if you go back a little bit, I mean, I know you obviously for the last 5 years or so, but you are originally trained as an architect and then you got into business. I think there was a DNA which you probably inherited from the family, but that journey of studying architecture and going on to found different companies, both in the US and India, how was that? I mean, that's a sneak peek we would like into your brain.
Well, this actually comes from the fact that I was a rebellious teenager. And in India, you sort of have this mentality driven into you, especially if you've taken science in school, that you either become a doctor or an engineer. And even though my bent of mind was always towards engineering, and I've been a coder since I was in middle school, so I was building websites and games and stuff like that, it was this rebellious streak of mine that led me down the road saying, I will not study medicine and I will not study engineering. What does that leave? Not much. So architecture ended up coming from a fact that it blended together creativity and engineering. And so I went and studied architecture. And my first love was still always engineering. Serendipitously, that's when an opportunity came about to start up a company. And I'm a second generation entrepreneur. My parents, my uncle, aunt, etc., they've all started businesses, built them into very, very large companies, and also one's been taken to IPO, one's been exited through M&A. This inspired me. So I decided I would give it a shot on my own as well. So I jumped into it headlong. And
So that was straight after architecture?
right after architecture.
Wow.
So this opportunity came along to start a drone company. I thought, oh, that sounds cool. And this is back in 2007. So I was like, that's really cool. That's futuristic and all of that. So that's how I ended up co-founding a drone company, and was initially started to do marketing on it, but then evolved beyond that, where I was sitting and designing the drones, building them myself, and so on. After that, the bug had got me. I for again for functional requirements sake went and did an MBA, which probably really didn't help too much in the grander scheme of things when it comes to entrepreneurship.
I think both of us will agree. Bhaskar, you probably have a different point of view, but I would, yeah.
And so after the MBA, turned down McKinsey to start up again. Sold that company. I sold the drone company. I sold the company I started after the MBA in health tech. Then I wanted to start up in something very, very different. I had this very cool, novel idea, which at the time it wasn't being called influencer marketing, but essentially it was influencer marketing. This was before the world of influencers came about, and Instagram influencers and things weren't really a thing. So nobody understood what we were trying to do. So that one, unfortunately,
That was back in what, 2014, 15?
that was 2014, 15, and we tried to start it in one of the wrong places, which was Bangalore. It might have actually worked in a place like Silicon Valley or LA, where that trend was beginning to emerge around influencers and so on. But we set out to build it in Bangalore because of the perception that tech talent is affordable, plentiful, and good. And so unfortunately couldn't raise funding from the Indian startup ecosystem at that point of time. And then eventually going down that road is how I met my co-founder. We started working together, and then we ended up founding Bigthinx together.
I was just wondering, since you said that you couldn't raise capital at that time in India because it wasn't ready, the ecosystem wasn't ready. So for you as a founder, how important is timing? And how do you time, like when you started this startup, did you time it well? How did you know like this is the right time to do it?
Oh God, no! I've been ahead of the curve on every startup I've done. But I think that's also the secret to timing, because when you start before the time is right is when you're ready when the time is right. So the difficult part of this is sticking it out until the time is right. And that is often a hard one to get, because if you start building for a need that already exists right now and you've not predicted it, you're already too late. There's plenty of other people building for that. And the question of timing is an interesting one, because I've never really gotten it right. I've always been before time.
Yeah. So you're basically saying that ideally you want to be on the cusp of certain things. The hockey stick is probably a couple of years out, but you're not really sure. But at the same point in time, you need to have the vision that industry is going to change this way, or certain things are going to stay the same. So it's a lot of deep consumer insights coupled with the technology disruption aspect as well, right?
It is. So it's rarely the same idea that you start out with that actually makes the revenue in the business. There are a lot of pivots that happen along the way. That's what happened in our case. That's what happened with every one of my previous startups, or any that I'm currently engaged with as well. I see that ideas change every day, and as you derive more customer insights, as you see market changes occurring both from a tech perspective and innovation perspective and so on, ideas evolve. Timing, I think timing is more of being prepared for an opportunity if it comes. And consumer insights is one piece of it. Understanding if it's in the technology space, understanding of how technology is evolving, what kind of trends are shaping the world. There could also be macroeconomic factors, certain precedents coming into power that I shall not name, that influence the entire global ecosystem. So yeah, there's so much that can happen over there. It's hard to stay on top of things, but I think luck is something we just don't give enough credit to in the startup world or in any sort of business, really. Luck is a pivotal factor in all of this. You can have 10 different people doing the same thing. One succeeds because of a fortuitous stroke. They beat the right person, or they are at the right place at the right time, and so on and so forth. So I think a little bit has to do with that.
But I think it's interesting that you mentioned luck. A lot of founders don't really, or we always underestimate the power of luck. But is there any way you can improve your luck? Is it possible to do it like, say, can you get luckier?
There's this thing I used to hear on the radio, especially in India. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation. I think, and I don't know who said that, but it's a good one. It stayed in my mind. So it really is that. What I think is luck is waiting for an opportunity to arise that you are prepared for to begin with, and then it so happens that that opportunity comes along. Now, that opportunity may not always come along, but if it does, you're ready for it, and that's what I think really plays into it more than luck by just a stroke of fortune.
So, Shiva, let's be broadly honest here. You lived in the US, you studied in the US, you built businesses in the US, and then there is India. So, if you were to talk about three sort of nightmarish experiences that founders face building out of India, what would be the top three?
Only three.
Only three.
Only three. That's the difficult part of it. Number one, I would say, is dealing with the talent in India. You've got a lot of people, especially when it comes to technology, that have these supposed skill sets, but maybe it's 1 or 2% of them who actually can do what they say they can. And trying to find these 1 or 2 people is often a job of getting a big funnel going and then weeding out until you get to those. The second is just in terms of attitude. I think that is more of an Indian problem. It's both good and bad, right? In India, we have jugaad, and jugaad works well, I think, when you're trying to innovate and get something done quick. When you want to test out the market, you want to test out the waters. But it's not good for a product that you're building that is going to withstand the test of time. Because jugaad is trying to hold a building up with a toothpick. At some point, it's going to collapse when you keep adding weight. And that's the other problem that I see, that jugaad gets employed no matter what. And the third one, building in India, is, at least in the past, from what I've seen, is innovation doesn't get recognized and credited. India's had this mindset of take from the West and copy for India. And this has worked. It's gotten funded by investors. It's been recognized in the media. It gets blown up because when you do this, you've taken an innovation that's already existed somewhere else and just adapted it. But if you're trying to do something that is truly innovative or groundbreaking in India, it doesn't get the support. It doesn't get the American version of this, which is go do it. You can do this. We'll support you. In India, it's like, are you crazy? Has this been done before? If it's not been done before, who are you to do it? And
Why are you even doing?
Yeah, why are you even doing it? How do you de-risk this? I was like, startups are a game of risk. That's why America does so well, really. Right? They take that risk. They make insane bets. Somebody comes and says, I want to build a rocket ship that will go at the speed of light so that I can reach XYZ star in so many days. And in America, they'll pat you on the back and says, go do it. Here's $1 or a few. In India, they'll be like, are you nuts? You know how much that costs? You know how much what the logistics are around it? You know what the government regulation is? You know this, you know that, etc. So ultimately, you're demotivated even before you start.
Essentially, what I'm trying to say is, as Indians, we tend to look at things from a very functional, frugal point of view first, rather than the big vision and whatever you're trying to aspire to do.
Exactly, and that is one of my pet peeves with trying to build a business in India, especially if you're truly differentiated or innovative.
No, all three very interesting points. I think we should discuss them a bit more. The first one you said, hiring people, getting the right talent. Now, do you also think retaining talent is a challenge in India once you hire the right people? And how do you manage that?
That would have been a fourth point, so I didn't include that.
So I preempted you. Sorry.
But yes, in India the tendency is to jump jobs every 1 year or less. The way that we tend to look out at this is we look at what people have done in the past. If they're not freshers and we're not hiring for a fresher role, have they displayed a history of job hopping in very short spaces of time, 2 months, 3 months, and so on? So this is something that is a red flag for us. Now, there could be a genuine reason. We have a conversation with the person and understand, is it something genuine? Was there a medical emergency? Was there something with the family? Was there an unavoidable reason for them to do that? Or is it just that they can't commit or can't stick around with one and they're just looking for something new? Or is it a question of, just trying to get a higher salary or a pay raise? Um, the other thing that we do when retaining talent is we've recently made a plan right now after realizing that employees are not really tied into the future of the company. They're not looking for a stable place to grow. They are not always aligned with the vision of where the growth of the business is. So this is a plan that we've actually recently made, that we will just give everybody ESOPs, and there'll be a cliff on these, and it'll vest over a certain point of time. So regardless of whether they deserve them or not, you can't oftentimes you can't realize on day one whether a person deserves those ESOPs or not. But it may be something that aligns their personal motivation to the growth story of the company. And apart from that, on employee retention, it's about happiness. I think it's not about ping pong tables and pizza. It's about the environment that you foster. It's the people they are working with day in and day out. Are they excited to meet those people? Do they share something in common? Do they share a whatever? It could be any different aspects of culture, right? It might be a shared love for media, a shared love for movies, a shared love for innovation, just the hunger to get things done. It's these things that bring people closer together and make them want to keep working together. And we try to also do this when we hire. There's the Myers-Briggs test, there's the Enneagram, and so on. We do this. We ask people to take a very shortened version of it and try and see if they are complementary to the other team members that we have. It's not a hard and fast that they have to be, but it's definitely a plus if they are of a personality type that would get along with everyone else and increase the overall culture of the team.
Finding talent is super, super difficult in India. Like I think I've completely empathize with you, and I see that everywhere. That it's like finding a needle in a haystack, and the haystack is probably 300 million people. It's a large haystack. And once you have found somebody, how do you get them to be with you on your journey? How do they have fun with the other people who are in the team? I think that's very important as well. They should enjoy what they do, and they should enjoy who they do it with. So one thing I'm very curious to understand is how difficult does it be as an Indian team to go into a large fashion brand? Because people have done that from different parts of the world. I mean, Silicon Valley, Israel, Singapore, India. It must have been extremely challenging, right? So a little bit of insights in terms of how you manage to do that, because you have a very credible and a good roster of clients that you work with today. I know it's been a hard, bruising journey, but some insights, I think, because that adds a lot of value to founders who are doing businesses who want to sell outside of India and cracking that GTM, especially at an enterprise level in certain industries which are not very mainstream and tech heavy, is definitely something I would love to hear more about.
So again, we spoke about luck. We spoke about serendipity. A little bit played in there. Back in 2020, Prada was searching for the top fashion tech companies around the world, fashion tech startups, that it would bring under its wing and mentor. And this actually got got us for whatever reason. Prada got us on its radar, and we were one of 8 startups that got picked by Prada to go to Milan and learn from them, get introduced to the fashion ecosystem in Milan, a lot of these luxury brands and so on. So this was the luck part of it. Now, once we ended up going there, we had to crack into the luxury ecosystem. Developing those networks was tough at first, but it's through those networks that a lot has happened in terms of the fashion tech space and breaking into the inner circle in fashion. Because once you know some people, you get to know more people and more people and more people, and there's this trust factor that comes up once people have met you. Breaking into that circle, just like breaking into any other circle, is the toughest part of it. Now, certain circles are easier. Tech is a lot easier to break into than say fashion, which is a very close, very tightly knit circle. So this is something I have to actually give my co-founder Chandralika complete credit, because she will go at it basically.
She's a super networker.
Like honey badger when it comes down to it. When she clamps down, she will not let go
She'll
until
not
it
let
gives.
go.
Yeah, so just sheer perseverance until people met us. And then when they met us once, then things went well because they realized they could get along with us. We're not their stereotypical perception of the Indians who are there to basically grovel or and so on, which is the way they think about Indians outside, especially in fashion, which is a very conservative industry, and so that really helped break into the circle. The other thing that we did was that we realized we're not going to get the brand signed up in this way, just by knowing the inner circle and trying to pitch them a product. We needed something that we could show them some commercial traction, because fashion is one of those industries that like, who else has done it?
Yeah, it's a big FOMO sort of a space.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys are the first to do it. You know what? I can't take a bet on something new. Show me who else has done it. We're like, okay, how do we overcome this? So this is where we started applying to selected accelerators. And
That was mid 2020.
that was mid 2020, late 2020. Yeah. Now, what ended up happening from the Target Accelerator is that out of the 10 odd companies in that accelerator, Target chose to work with, I think, 2 companies, which was us and one other. And this led into a contract with them. And that gave us the leverage that we needed to go to a large retailer or a fashion brand and say, look, the Target is betting on us. This is what they've trusted us with. You can do the same. And that then gets people over that fence where they're like, okay, we'll put a little bit of money into this and try it. And then that pilot turns into a commercial opportunity, and then your roster keeps growing, which is also why we've chosen to focus, as you know, Sandeep, from the top down. So we're going to the world's largest fashion brands. I can go to a mid-market brand and sign them on at any point of time, but that will not open doors upwards. It'll only open doors further down. Yeah. So we're going to the largest in the world and working our way downwards. Once we have the whole roster of companies that are absolute premium tier 1 players, then after that tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 is very, very easy.
It's going to be a lot more difficult to crack the top guys, but there's willingness to pay. And once you have those logos, it's easier to kind of go down.
You also mentioned Prada, right? So how did these guys discover you? You were like strong online presence, someone connected you to them.
Actually, so we had put up a video of an early piece of software on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
In their scouting for talent, they came across this video and they sent us a mail saying, hey, we'd like to speak. And so I said, all right, let's do this. You know, it was Startup Bootcamp, which is an accelerator in Europe in combination with Prada. So Prada had tasked them with finding these companies. So they reached out.
So like an opportunity radar sort of a play, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's hired for innovation. Most of the fashion brands actually outsource this because they don't know what the hell they're doing with innovation. So, pardon my French, but they essentially outsource it. The outsource partners go around digging and finding, and they do a good job with this, and they come up with a bunch of different companies. Then they narrow down that list with the brand, like Prada in this case, and put out selected offers to selected companies to participate. And this is been the same way that we engage with Prada. We're engaging with a few different, very large name fashion brands even today.
It's very interesting what you mentioned, and I think I've struggled as an entrepreneur, and I see a lot of founders struggling. Is that transition from doing pilots to saying no until there's money on the table. That transition from I do pilots to hey, is this guy going to give me business? Is this guy the right ICP, customer profile? Then I will do a paid pilot, but you have to have skin in the game. Who are the stakeholders involved? This is my pilot. Was that difficult? It's just saying no to brands and good money, or rather, you're not sure what money, to saying, hey, listen, I'm going to only do this. So there's a certain amount of focus you need, and more importantly, there's a lot of conviction you need to do that.
It's hard to say no to money, right?
Yeah.
And when somebody is coming
It's
to
like
you
the
and
anti-wolf
saying,
of Wall Street.
yeah, it's like somebody, the brand's coming to you and saying, shut up and take my money. And then you to say no to that is very difficult. But we've learned this the hard way because whenever we said yes to that money, where we were doing something outside of our focus area, it actually hit us badly in our focus area because our attention was diverted. We were trying to do something else, even though we knew what we were doing. It was taking time and attention away from completing and scaling what would actually make money over the longer term. So yes, when came to pilots and paid pilots and so on, we take them on. We still take them on, but only if it aligns with the product and the growth and goals that we have now.
Just wondering because you mentioned about paid pilots. As a young company, how difficult was it to convince people to pay you for pilots?
It was difficult, but this is the thing with trying to sell to small businesses versus trying to sell to large businesses. Large businesses take convincing, but they're willing to pay, and they'll pay larger amounts. So you've got to show them some sort of proof that it would work, or at least enough reasonable evidence that something would work. And it's often long to sell to them. It takes months of conversations and work. But then when they commit, they pay, and therefore then you don't struggle with getting them to pay for paid pilots. With the smaller businesses, our experience has been that they many times they ghost you. Firstly, they don't agree to paid pilots, so they want stuff for free. Other times, they completely ghost you, or they straight up stiff you on the payment, and those are not pleasant experiences. And of course, I understand coming as a small business, as a startup ourselves, that you may not always have money to pay somebody, but if you're buying a certain skill set, or you're buying a certain piece of technology or a product, you need to allocate the money to do that beforehand, not stiff the your supplier or vendor in that case. And that's why it's been easier for us to do paid pilots because we focused on the level and tier of organizations that are willing to pay and have dedicated budgets for technology and innovation and so on where it comes out of those budgets.
But it must be very difficult to leave money on the table, right?
Absolutely. I think, Pushkar, what stem from it is the experience that you have. If you take that money, you're actually going to shaft yourself and you're going to shaft your team. So once you have that clarity of thought, then you realize, dude, that's great money, but it's not going to float my boat. Yeah.
I'll give you an example of something that happened with us. We did one of these. We did it because we needed the money. We took it as a one off, even though we were focused on building a scalable product that would sell itself. what ended up happening is the person who was responsible for building the main product got assigned this task of building this one-off. It got more complicated than was anticipated. It was supposed to take about 45 days. It ended up taking 4 months. And these 4 months got so frustrating for this person because he was taken away from what he was there to build, what he wanted to build, that he ended up quitting. And we lost a very, very good person on the team because of this. So, yes, you're shafting yourself not just on the product, but also on your team, because they may not want to build that piece that brings money on the table, but is not contributing to something larger.
So you raised capital. You've obviously done the rounds of going to the US, talking to VCs there. And obviously based in London now. You talk to a lot of both cross-border VCs as well as British VCs. And obviously you talk to a lot of VCs in India. What's been the bottlenecks, or what's been the you see the difference in it's not a quality question or a pedigree question, but their way of the world. What do you see the difference between people operating in the Valley to London to India?
People in Silicon Valley, the investors over there are very risk friendly. They'll bet on high risk stuff. In the UK, they are far more conservative and risk averse. So they'll want to verify historicals, documents, etc. Really nail down. India is on the opposite end of the spectrum from Silicon Valley. It is highly, highly risk averse from an investment standpoint. That is at least what I've come across. So, Indian investors basically, one, they'll ask you for a ton of paperwork. They'll ask you for a huge amount of due diligence materials and so on, which you go pretty much crazy doing. We have a data room, and we put this together for any investors that need to ask or need to see it. US investors, they flick through it and they're like, okay, this is great. UK investors go, okay, I see all of this, but can you add this thing? And then Indian investors like, you don't have this, 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 you don't have this.
So it's like a checklist back.
And it's like a massive checklist. And I was like, why does this even make sense? Like there's items on there that like, what were your revenues 4 years ago? We weren't incorporated 4 years ago, but still, what were your revenues? I was like, zero. Why isn't there a document in your data room that shows your revenues 4 years ago were zero? I was like, we weren't incorporated.
So much of a checklist culture.
So that's the thing. One of the things with India, Indian VCs that I found, and Indian investors in general. So there's the bureaucracy. As somebody was actually saying to me yesterday, the British brought bureaucracy to India and invented it. Indians perfected it. So we see the bureaucracy in the Brits. In the US, we see very little of that. So again, the other thing is fund sizes and check sizes are an order of magnitude different in many cases.
Sure.
So the same product that you're raising for that would net you $1 million raise in India would net you 10 million or more in Silicon Valley, because they tend to put in more money where they have faith that things could play out. They're taking that 1 in 100 risk, and they're willing to put in big money to make big bucks over there. In India, it is still, again, the same thing about being conservative in terms of capital.
Is that because of a lack of conviction in certain hypotheses? Because I don't know, Pushkar, I think we wrote an article. I wrote an article recently on LinkedIn saying that, hey, the ecosystems in the US and India are different. And they're different because the US VC ecosystem has been around since 1970, late 60s. Okay. I mean, unofficially, it's been around for 100 years, but at least in the form that we see it, it's been around since the early to mid 70s. Whereas in India, we are about 15 years old, right? So from a US standpoint, you have a lot of people running funds or who are in VC firms who are ex-entrepreneurs who've taken exits, understand what the risk appetite and have probably more founder empathy than you can find in a market like India. Whereas here, we have those frameworks. And if you look at operator VCs, the number of people who actually have been real operators and who can actually add value, that number is very skewed, which a lot lesser than in the US. So we have actually 20, 30 years more to go. Or I think in the last 10 years have been fantastic. But say in the next 10, 15 years, you would have a lot more entrepreneurs who make big exits, who become VCs. Then they're able to write a check to you or a business plan on a napkin, which doesn't happen in India. But
Right,
a
right.
lot of people in the US who do that. So, yeah, the Indian VCs have always looked at US models and saying, will it work here? Can we Indianize the model here? But I mean, I don't have a better way to say it, but it's a stunted ecosystem. There's a lot of evolution, maturity that needs to happen, right?
Right, right.
I agreed on that front, and we are seeing more and more operators who've scaled and built businesses overseas who are coming back to India to invest in their home country. So I think those kind of operators turned VCs are going to be instrumental in changing this ecosystem. India comes from there's a lot of dogma, let's say, in India. We're a very old culture. We've got highly ritualized ways of doing things. There's a lot of bureaucracy that came in during the colonial era and has persisted beyond it. The US, from the time they started as a very entrepreneurial country.
White canvas, right?
It was a blank canvas. You know, everybody had to forge their own way, and essentially this got imprinted into the way that they behave and the way that they do business and persist today. So India is breaking free of those centuries of dogma that we come from and is beginning to. But I think the operators turned VCs, especially those who are scaled businesses outside of India and are coming back, are going to be instrumental towards changing this.
Obviously, you like traveling, of course, Chandalika likes meeting a lot more people than you do, but you still enjoy traveling, socializing.
It's not that I don't enjoy meeting people. I do, but I do best when I'm meeting people face to face and I'm able to engage. I'm not the phone person, the chat person, so I love to travel. I do. I will take any opportunity I can to travel to a place that I haven't before, and every opportunity I can to discover more about places that I have been before, but I didn't know about.
But do you think that helps you as a founder, tech founder, meeting new people, exploring new cultures?
Absolutely, because every culture we spoke about the dogma in India, we spoke about the entrepreneurial in the US. Um, every culture brings something different to the table in the way they think about products, they think about businesses, they think about buildings. Some are very risk averse, some are very risk friendly. The way that they would think through structuring business models. For example, in Africa, the thought process for the way businesses are structured is incredibly different to anything else that you'll see in the West, and it's very very eye opening, and I absolutely thrive upon that to learn and adapt because there's something to learn from everyone, and that's what I think.
Right, right.
Have you naturally become used to managing chaos? Is that one of the skills that you have after being an entrepreneur for so long?
You don't
You can still get
manage-
pissed off with people, but you can manage the chaos bit.
you don't
And how do you
manage
develop that skill?
chaos as much as juggle it around, right? So you can't really contain the chaos. You just move the chaos to where it is more productive, and that is in the sense of managing chaos. I guess that's what you mean. It's just shifting it around so that it's less destructive and more constructive.
And how did you develop this skill of managing, not juggling chaos? Does it come with experience or anything else?
It comes with experience, yes, for sure. So the more chaos you manage, and juggle, the easier it gets to do it. It also, I think, stems from the fact that I have seen my family go through an entrepreneurial journey, and they also had to do this. So somehow, without consciously realizing it, I was imbibing all of these things while growing up. So I think I find it easier than a lot of other founders. When I started my entrepreneurial journey, I found it easier. Over time, of course, any founder will learn to do this because everything is always chaos. Everything needed to be done yesterday. Everything is falling apart all around you at every given moment of time. And that comfort, just by doing it, you end up learning it.
What is it that you see as an achievement, a milestone, a flag? I mean, we don't want to go back and talk about checklists, but are there certain checks that you have in your mind that you need to do?
That's a good one, and I ask myself that often enough. Why do I do what I do? Because I find it more rewarding than doing anything else. Um, Personally, professionally, I like the idea of planting a seed and watching it grow, and that's a metaphor because I'm awful at gardening and I don't have the patience for it. But yeah, I want to nurture something and see it grow massively. That's why I do what I do. After my first startup and I sold that, I said I will sell that and then I will chill out for a few months before deciding what to do next. I chilled out for pretty much like 3 days, and then I was in the next thing, and then that happened with the second one and the third one and so on. So while I tell myself, and I've told you this, that I would like to buy a private island, build a house on it, and just get away from the world and stay there by myself till I want to interact with the world, then I can come out, go to the mainland, meet people, and then again just disappear back into my solitude. I say this, but I think my co-founder is more right in telling me that I'll never be able to actually do it because I might buy that island, but I'll be in my next startup at that point of time. I cannot not do it. That is part of my DNA, and I've just been doing it over and over again. So only time will tell whether I will be actually able to get to an end goal, or will the end be building my goals.
Like as a founder, how do you develop these powerful insights, guts? So reading is one way, talking to people is another. You're very well aware of what's happening in the world. But any advice on how do you develop this founder's instinct? Because building a startup also takes some instinct, right? It's not a pure science.
Very hard question to answer. Surrounding oneself with a lot of information is key to this. Surrounding oneself with people who thrive on information is even more crucial to this, because you can read, you can speak to people, you can do all of these things, but what is your limiter in all this? It's time. How much time can you spend doing that? But if other people around you have read it, they've experienced it, and they've distilled it down to you, that they can pass it along to you in a very, very clear and concise form, you are absorbing all of their learning very, very quickly. And surrounding yourself more with these kind of people is really helpful in developing those insights. That's my take on it.
No, very well said. Awesome.
Brilliant. I mean, Shivang, this was very, very enjoyable. And
And insightful.
Very, very enjoyable and insightful. I think we learned a ton of things. And I think Pushkar and me are very, very keen on giving as much knowledge that we have and community back to founders. Because as you know, there are a lot of people starting up who, especially in the path for first generation founders, are very tough. So anything that we can add value would be immensely beneficial. Everybody, please like and share. If there are any comments, feedbacks, please leave them below. And we've had a beautiful place which has been provided by Beehive. Thanks to their team for hosting us. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.